Alright guys, this is day 2 of the simulations and models activity. So just follow along with Edpuzzle, answer the questions when prompted, and follow the instructions given, guys. So let's begin. So yesterday we went with the disease spread simulation. You got to see how that ran and how it ended. So based on that, we got a couple questions to start the day with. So on the Edpuzzle, take a moment and answer these questions. How can this simulation help someone who wants to learn about disease spread? And the second part, what are the patterns in the simulation that show how diseases spread? So take a few minutes, think back to the program from yesterday. I'll link it here above the questions. Take a moment and answer those 2 questions, and I'll go back and address some possible answers after you take a shot at it. Alright, so let's go over some of the possible solutions. Let's look at the first question. How can this simulation help someone who wants to learn about diseases? So, a couple different answers you could have had. There's lots of different ones. So, this simulation can help because it lets us see how diseases can spread in big groups of people. It's like a game, but it teaches you how germs move around. We can also use this to understand why some diseases spread fast and we cannot stop them. So that's one really long, eloquent answer there. All right, another possible answer for number 1. This simulation helps us learn about diseases by showing us how they spread from person to person. It's kind of like playing with toy people. You can see what happens and when some of them get sick. All right, question 2. So that one asks, what are the patterns in the simulation that show how diseases spread? So some sample answers here. Yes. I noticed that when there are more people close together, the disease spreads faster. It's like we're all crowded in one room, and if one person gets sick, we all might get sick. All right, another one is, I think I saw a pattern that when there were a few people sick at the beginning, it took longer for everyone to get sick. But when more people were sick in the beginning, it spread faster. All right, so those are some possible solutions to those. Let's move on to our next point here. All right, so what are the benefits of using simulations? So let's step away from the disease spread program for a second. So if we were not studying how diseases spread, would you use this simulation to understand it better? Sorry, I misread the question there. So if you were studying how diseases spread, would you use this simulation to understand it better? Why or why not? Question 2, think about scientists studying seatbelts and airbags. How could a simulation like this help them in their research? All right, so a few different sample answers. Let's just look at one from the first question. So if you were studying how diseases spread, would you use this simulation to understand it better? Why or why not? So sample response number 1, I might use this simulation, but it's important to remember that this is a simplified model. Real diseases can be much more complex, and with people getting better or becoming immune. So while it is a helpful tool, it doesn't reflect reality. All right, a sample response for the second one. So think about scientists studying seatbelts and airbags. How could the simulation be used to help them in their research? So here's a sample response. Scientists could use simulations like this to test different scenarios without putting people in danger. For example, they could see how the different car crash situations might play out with or without seatbelts and airbags, which would be impossible to do or too risky to do with real people. All right, so that wraps up our focus on simulations. So let's go ahead and move on and get back to our project where we're working with user interfaces. So little reminder, you guys did the user interface planning sheets for the ice cream shop. That we'll talk about the prompt in a second. So remember, you've got 2 parts that you're going to be using. You're going to be using your user interface to help plan out how the customer and the employees / club members are going to interact with the interface. And then you've got the pseudocode, which breaks down the sprite name, what it's supposed to do, and then step by step the pseudocode. So let's go back over our prompt. So your club sells ice cream each Thursday and Friday. It is becoming difficult to get students there to sell the ice cream during football season. How might you develop a program that once the customer selected the ice cream they wanted, the program would list the price and subtract it from the ice cream inventory? The club president would like to add be able to add inventory to the ice cream data so that at any point they can see from the program how much of each ice cream they have. Alright, so that takes you to the question sheets. So you need, the sub will pass these out, or I will pass these out at this point. So let's go through this real quick. So you guys are going to go through this questioning guide to help you reflect on the quality of your planning on your user interface sheets. So let's go through these. I'll talk through it, give you a couple little pointers, but otherwise you will work on this in class today and on a little bit portion of the next day. So you will have to move around and talk with other group members, but it's important for you to get several people's input outside of your own group, because everyone's is going to be a little different based on their design. So it's important that you actually take the time to communicate with different people outside of your group and inside of your group to make sure you have everything you need for your particular program that you're going to make for your user interface. So the first set of questions talks primarily about planning that you guys are going to do together as a group. So that's 1 through 4. The remainder of the questions, you're going to get to shuffle around the room and work with different people of different groups. So you want them to go through and answer the questions so you can get an idea of how or if you need to make any changes. Okay, so step 1, you guys are going to take some time and get, I'd say, at least 2 or 3 people outside of your group to actually go through and look at your user interface and talk with them, explain it to them, and have them answer these 4 questions just on your sheet. Kind of keep it small, like maybe do a couple columns, and have them write it small. And try not to be super wordy. If you need to get an extra sheet of paper for you to collect the responses, that's going to be extremely helpful. All right, so you're going to do that for this first set of responses. Once you're done, you're going to take these back and you're going to look at the responses and come up with some questions to ask users based on their feedback. Because the goal here is to help you find any patterns that you see in what they're saying. If they think it's confusing, or if you need certain buttons, or if you need to make changes because maybe you don't have instructions. It's really good to have this stuff planned out ahead of time. That way you're not having to burn class time trying to tweak things and get it to work, since you need to make changes and programs. So we don't want to have to make programs next week while we're actually creating this. So take your time. Once you make your list, you necessarily don't have to go back and talk to those people. If you have something you would like to ask them to get more details, but the goal is you should be able to figure out from here what you need to make changes. So based on that, take some time and reflect on it and figure out what changes you're going to make and list those out here. So once you've listed out, you also need to take some time to update your planning documents, which would be the user interface sheet and the pseudocode sheet. If you need to get a blank sheet of paper and just do it on a separate paper, and you can show me your updated user interface when you're getting ready to program your project, that also works fine for me. All right, guys, so take your time. You have the remainder of class to complete any group work that you need to for the day, plus you'll have a little bit of the class tomorrow. But remember, tomorrow is an abbreviated schedule, so you're not going to have much time for that. So take your time. Have a good day. We will start our we'll start our programming on Monday for this scenario. So be sure you take your time, have this done, and try to have this submitted by the end of class tomorrow. Not tomorrow, sorry, end of class Friday. All right, guys, take your time. Have a good day.